Let's talk about apathy. Not the worst situation you can find yourself in, but certainly far from being the best. So, what can you do if you're having to tackle it? I work on this problem through Neurographica, and if you want to know what insights I obtained, come with me. Welcome to the 4 Body Journey channel. After last week, where we had a brief stop at the tavern, we are well fed, we are well rested, and we are ready to begin again on our journey. So, welcome to episode 4 of my series Diary of a Journeyman, where I take you with me on my journey to solve the issues that I face in my life on a daily basis through Neurographica, where I show you and I share with you the insights that I've obtained, the ideas that I have formulated, and the practical steps that I want to implement in my life to show you very clearly and very practically what benefits you can have from learning Neurographic and applying to your own life. So, this is a drawing I made this week. And the question I wanted to find an answer to was, what can I do to fight apathy? So, let me clarify a little bit. What do I mean with apathy? How does it apply? How does it come out in my own life? Well, this is the issue. Whenever I start a project, I have the right motivation, the right ideas, everything goes well. Until there is a roadblock, there is an issue. So if it's a small one, I can deal with it and I can continue, no problem. But if it's a bigger one, then my tendency is to just basically stop, lose all the motivation, stop the project, not continue it any further, and then do other things until I get motivation to start a different kind of project. So this project just stays there and never gets brought to completion. So this is definitely something that I do not want to have in my life. So I want to figure out why it comes out and what I can do to fix that. It is true on the one hand that maybe my default way of handling difficulties is that. I remember a few years ago I read a book where I learned the concept of the 4 Fs. So the 4 responses to external stress or traumas or whatever stimuli you can think about. And these 4 Fs were the 4 responses were fight, freeze, flee, and fawn. So it might appear that fleeing is my default way of handling external sources of stress. However, I want to be able to act differently if necessary. I want to be able to bring projects to completion. I want to be able to get things done. And so I need to figure out exactly how to solve this issue and how to become more capable of tackling external unforeseen circumstances. Now, I start working on the drawing, and the first thing that comes to my mind as I start working on it, as I start drawing and I start adding the lines to my sheet, is how I tackle the project. So what happens? I have an idea that I want to bring to practice, and how do I do that? So I don't start right away. I don't start trying to implement it right away. I need to plan. And the way I plan things usually is I let the idea, move around in my head. I let it mature. I let it become more solid. I have a series of details that I want to iron out before I start the project. So after a while, when this idea has become sufficiently clear, sufficiently solid, and the plan of action of bringing that idea to practice is clear enough, then I move. Then I start to implement it practically. So when do external interference, come into play? Well, it can come into play in 2 different ways. On the one hand, it could prevent me from being able to plan something out. So I don't have the opportunity to decide, exactly how do I want to get from the idea to the practice. And that is clearly, my ideal way of handling ideas is to have the time to put them into, to clarify them in my mind before I put them into practice. And if I'm not allowed that, then clearly that becomes an issue for me. On the other hand, interferences could come up after I have planned everything. When I start implementing it, those interferences arrive and force me to deviate from the plan that I had created. So on the one hand, you could say, well, you can create more solid plans that take into account of more possible interferences, but at the same time, you cannot create a plan that takes every single thing into account. You always have to be mindful that some things you'll never be able to plan for. If you have a moving business and during the night there is a thunderstorm, a thunder breaks a tree, the tree falls over a car and breaks it, how can you take that into account? You cannot take into account everything. So it is impossible to create a perfectly solid plan. So whenever those interferences occur, I need to be able to take care of them. And it almost feels in a way like whenever those interferences arrive and change my plan or force me to change my plan, it's as if they make that plan much heavier, and it becomes virtually impossible for me to be able to keep bringing it forward. So that is an interesting metaphor, but at the same time, I want to ask myself, okay, so what is the issue? What is the source of heaviness, and how can I deal with that? How can I get through it and make sure that my plans come to their natural conclusion? As I continued drawing, I started to bring out some events from my past, and I tried to bring out some examples of projects in which I was overwhelmed by apathy, and where I just let them go, I just abandoned them, and I never brought them to completion. So imagine as if my mind was a library where you have a bunch of shelves with a lot of containers with every single event of my life in them. And so I just went there. I took out all of the information concerning all of these projects where I didn't bring them to completion because of apathy, and then I just divide them into different categories according to why the apathy came out. What was the source of that apathy? And the interesting observation was that I basically could divide all of these events into 3 categories, just 3, so which is a very important observation. So the first category is projects where the external interference was directly aimed at not allowing me to bring the project to completion. So let me give you an example. This isn't something that really happened to me. I'm just giving you a very simple example to show you exactly what I mean. Imagine that you have prepared for a university exam, and out of spite, one of your roommates has decided to slash the tires of your car. You cannot get to go to the exam because someone interfered directly in order not to allow you to get to that exam. So that is an example of this first category. The second category is events, projects where the external interference isn't directly aimed at causing you not to complete your project, but that is just a side effect. So let me give you an example. You are still preparing for this exam, but for 2 weeks there is no electricity. So you have no internet connection, you have no electricity, you cannot use your laptop, and you cannot study for that exam. So of course, maybe it was just an accident that the electricity went away, okay? Maybe it was just a malfunction, nothing, no one, no ill intent from anyone, but still, as a result of that, you were not able to prepare for that exam. So that is the second category of events. The third category is a bit different because it deals more with self-doubt. So basically, it is projects where the source of interference comes from inside. Basically, it is related to a fear of failure, where I don't think I can bring the project to completion. I'm not confident enough in my abilities. I'm not confident enough in myself, and so I stop rather than having to face the fear of not being able to bring the project to completion. And so this is a different kind of events which has to be treated separately, I think. So here I need to tackle the fear of failure, whereas in the first 2 categories I can treat them in the same way, because basically it is a lack of an appropriate response, or at the very least appropriate in my opinion, to an external influence. So the event that stops me from bringing the project to completion it comes from outside. So I have no control over it because I cannot control other people. The only thing I can control is how I react to it. And so that is what I want to achieve. I want to figure out how to change my response to these external interferences so that I can still power through and bring the project to its natural end. As I continued drawing, I found myself stuck looking outside the window, and I was, struck by the trees and the plants that I saw and the sounds of the nature that I could hear from outside. And I don't know why, but in this period, this, time frame that I am working on right now, I'm always trying to almost instinctively, it's not something that I willingly try to do, but I always, tend to create those parallels between nature and my life. And I have noticed that, interestingly, I've noticed that whenever I think about how plants and animals, but plants in particular, tend to behave and respond to anything that happens to them, this allows me to understand my problems more deeply and to find more meaningful solutions for myself. So I started thinking, and I started, thinking about the plants and how they answer to external interferences. And the first image I saw is that of a seed that I plant on, in a vase, and I put a net or a block anyway on top of it, and the plants doesn't think, wait a second, there is something over me. I cannot grow perfectly straight, so why do I even bother? Let's just give up and I'm not going to grow at all. The plants doesn't think that. The plants, just grows around the net, grows on top of the net, but it adapts to the circumstance it finds itself in. It doesn't, just stop because why? There's an interference, so I better stop. No, it grows anyway. It follows its natural drive to grow, regardless of whether there is external interference or not. And so the first lesson that I could draw from that would be to basically become more resilient, become more adaptable to external influences, and plan better so that I already know in advance how to go around these external influences, these external interferences, and how I can become able to make my plans more bulletproof so that, no matter what interference I find in front of me, I find myself facing, I can still, get past it and get the job done. But as I was, unraveling this insight in my mind, I felt something. I felt that this wasn't it. This was an interesting lesson and definitely something that I can apply and that I can get results from. But at the same time, it's not what I'm looking for. There's something else. And so I kept thinking for a bit, and then I had an insight. And as soon as I had this insight, I was like, yes, that's it. That is the thing I'm looking for. And what I remember was that some plants, in order to avoid having their leaves eaten by animals, what they do is they create chemical substances that they put inside the leaves that either makes them really sour or outright poisonous. And so through that, they can avoid having their leaves eaten. And I was thinking, what does it mean? How I can apply that to my projects? And then it came this insight, that this eureka moment came. And I realized something. Sure, it's not bad, to plan better and to be able to account for more interferences. But why do I need to adopt that mentality, which is almost some sort of a losing mentality, You need to plan for everything. No. That's not what I want to do. What I want to do and what I have to do, these plants, they are defending themselves from an external interference. I want to be able to do the same. I want to be able to become the kind of person that can power through interferences. No matter what's in front of me, I want to be able to go through that, and bring my project to completion no matter what. That is the kind of person I want to become. I want to become a tough person. I want to become a strong person, a person that can really get things done as soon as I face an interference, no matter what it is. And this, I think, is a very powerful sort of insight. And yes, this is definitely on point. This is definitely something that I need to go, deeper down to figure out exactly how I can, apply that to my life. Now, here there's an almost immediate follow-up question, which is, okay, then now why don't you have the strength and resilience? What is the reason of your lack of such qualities? And I thought about it for a while, and then I realized something. The reason why I don't have these features is because my father has been basically terrible, has done a terrible job. My mother is amazing. She's not perfect, but she's always done her best for me and for all of my siblings. My father has been just downright horrible. Okay? I don't remember a single time he ever played with me or with any of my siblings for that matter. He has never taught me anything valuable. He has never taken time to teach me something or to guide me to acquire set of features, something that any father should do. He has never done that, okay? Every single thing I've learned in terms of character comes from my mother, not from my father. Let me share a little story, okay? The first time I participated in the Italian chemistry championships, there are high school competitions, so I participated in them in high school. The first time I went there in the main categories of, to win outright, the main Italian championship, I spoke with a couple guys before the competition started, the day before the competition, and they told me that in their qualifying round, they had a much higher score than me. So they told me what score they had, and it was much higher than mine. And so I got deflated, I got hit with apathy, the very same topic we're talking about now. And I thought about quitting. I thought about, what's the point? They scored so much higher than me. I have no chance of winning. And I remember I talked with my mother, I called my mother and I spoke with her and I told her, I shared this story with her and she told me, no, wait a second, stop, listen to me, you shut up with this, I don't want to hear any of that. The competition is tomorrow. Tomorrow, you start from 0 point, they start from 0 point, you get the same answer as them, we'll see tomorrow what happens, okay? If they win because they're better tomorrow, whatever. But tomorrow, you go and you give it your best. I don't care what they scored before, I only care what you do tomorrow. Tomorrow you go out there and you do your absolute best. If you win, good. If you don't win, whatever. You gave it your best, that's all I want from you. Well, what happened was that the following day I went there, I was much more, motivated thanks to this call from my mother, and I ended up winning the title. So, this combative attitude that I display in that specific instance came from my mother, not from my father. So all of the characteristics that I should have learned from my father, I never learned them. So now I need to sort of make do with the best that I have, and basically salvage my situation and remedy to the damage that my father inflicted me. So I have to deal with that, but hey, it's my life, so it's my responsibility to get myself to the best possible state. I'm in this situation, I'll deal with it and I'll get to a solution, and I'll make sure to develop all the characteristics that I want to develop. It is interesting that at this point, basically, the problem has shifted from apathy to it almost seemed like at that point in the drawing that I could not say clearly what kind of a person, what kind of a man I wanted to be. But then it started going inside, inside me, in my mind, in my psyche, and I started trying to figure out if I knew what kind of man I wanted to be. And it turned out I actually do. I have a very clear idea of how I want to be and how I want to behave. Okay? I know for a fact, for example, that I don't want to be the kind of weak man that, you see around a lot nowadays. the kind of man that cannot deal with any form of stress, that cannot deal with any issue, that are useless in situations of danger. But I also know that I don't want to be a bully, arrogant, or that puts down other people just for fun. I don't want to be that. I know who I want to be exactly. I want to be strong. I want to be able to support and provide for the people in my family. I want to be able to reach my goals. I want to be able to tackle any external interference or unforeseen circumstance and get through them. And I know I want to become able to, no matter what, to achieve my goals that I set out for myself, and to bring my projects to completion. I know I want to become that kind of person, that kind of man. But this is the issue. There is a disconnect from what I know I want to be and I can be, and what I practically do in my life. So it's almost like there is this disconnect, right? And I know for certain that, the things I just listed, I want to be those things and I can be those things. They come from inside my mind. I know what my values are. I know what I want to be. So, there's no mistake on that end. It's just that I don't know how to take these things and put them into practice. So it is a concerning situation, very interesting one, but a fairly concerning one. But it means that I need to work hard on myself in order to make sure that I can develop this circumstance, this, characteristics, this feature. Now the question becomes, how do I do that? On the one hand, I could think maybe, I can train those characteristics up like you would train a muscle in the gym. So, slowly over time, tackling stronger and stronger circumstances and harder circumstances in order to become better at dealing with them. Or maybe I could start studying from other people, learning from other people, gaining inspiration from other people. I need to work further. I need to work a bit further on that, a bit more on that. I need to make sure that I understand exactly what I want to do and what is the best way for me to patch this disconnect and being able to bring all the values that I have inside me outside, and apply them to my everyday life. Now, this was a very complex thought. This was a very complex, set of insights and ideas that I created. And so I needed to take a little break from this drawing for a little bit in order to clear my mind and unravel all of this set of ideas that I just had. And so it took me a while to reach the conclusion that I just shared with you. Once I did that, I kept, I went back to the drawing and I kept working on it. And I realized something after a while that I was, continuing to work on it. What I realized was that, sure, my basic modus operandi is to plan everything out before I start applying practically an idea. And that is fine. I don't necessarily need to change that. If that is how I operate normally, I can continue to do that, no problem. But I also need to make sure that I become capable of being comfortable with discomfort. So not only I am able to tackle some external influences, some external interferences, not only I have to be able to tackle them and get past them, but I also want to be able to do so without any significant level of stress or tension. I need to be able to, I have an interference in front of me, and like, okay, sure, cool, no problem. I'm gonna tackle that. It might take time, it might take effort, no problem, but I still want to be able to tackle that without any significant level of stress. And to this end, I started thinking about David Goggins. I'm not sure how many of you know him, and quite frankly, it's not really relevant whether you like him or not. I don't really care. Personally, I think, for example, that his approach is very, very interesting, but I don't think it would work for me because that level of physical punishment to acquire the level of mental toughness and resilience that he has would not work for me. I would not want to, damage my body to that level. But he can still be very inspiring, and it can still help us, to figure out a way to apply his message to our lives. And that's exactly what I want to do. So I want to be able to figure out how to train my mental and my physical and my emotional toughness and resilience my own way. So not through the kind of activities that he does, but through my own methods. And at that point, the question then becomes, okay, what is the way for you to learn this toughness? Well, is it just by training it? Do you train toughness like you would train a muscle? Or does it come from learning from other people, from gaining inspiration from other people, from studying other people? Well, that's the complex question and definitely requires a bit more thought. So I went back to the drawing. I started, adding more lines, more details and coloring and all that. And what I realized is that maybe for some people, the best approach is to just, they want to learn something, they want to acquire toughness, they just go. They find one activity that they can do and they just do it, no problem. I've realized that I need to, whenever I want to learn something, I have to be able to tackle it from multiple perspectives, from multiple points at the same time. Because I want to become a very complex person with a lot of sub roles, with a lot of nuance. And so I cannot just train that in one single way. I need to tackle it from many different points of view to create that nuance, So I need to talk with many people. I need to learn from many people. I need to gain inspiration from many people. I need to do many different activities. Every single one of them will give me a little bit. But when we put all of those little bits together, then we obtain some massive results. And so I think that is the winning recipe for me. That is the best way for me to acquire the set of characteristics that I want to acquire. And it's going to take time because this is a work that I'm going to have to do to myself at a very fundamental level. I need to repair some significant damage that my father, caused me, provoked in me. So that is going to take some time. That is going to take a lot of effort. And if I need 1, 2, 3, 5 years to repair that damage and to become the person I want and I can become, well, then so be it. The end definitely, justifies the time and the effort that I have to put in. Because this is the thing. I already know who I want to become. I already know who I can become. I need to patch that disconnect and be able to apply that to my everyday life. That is non-negotiable. That is definitely something that I have to do. And if it takes time and effort, then whatever. But I definitely want to make sure that whatever kind of person I want to become, that then I become, and then I'm able to become that person in my everyday life. Okay, so now it's time to draw conclusions. Out of all of the things that I have shared with you, all of the ideas, all of the insights that I've shared with you, what are the three main points that I can take home with me and that will impact me the most in my journey moving forward? The first insight is that right now I'm lacking toughness, resilience, at every level, mental, emotional, and physical. And I need to develop that because I fundamentally need it in order to obtain, to achieve all of the goals that I set out for myself. So that is non-negotiable. I need to become tough, resilient, and being able to endure whatever I'm facing. The second conclusion is that I have to be able to become comfortable in discomfort. So whenever I'm facing an external interference or I'm facing an issue, I have to be able to do so without any significant level of stress and tension, and I need to be able to perform at the highest level even in this situation where I'm facing those serious issues, because right now I'm a little bit struggling with this, and so I need to be able to perform at my very best, at my top level every single time, regardless of what I'm facing, regardless of whether everything is going according to plan or not. And the third conclusion that I can draw is that this process is going to take time, because I'm going to work at a very fundamental level of myself. I'm going to work on myself at a very fundamental level. And this kind of work requires a lot of introspection and a lot of time and effort. It is worth it because the end goal is so amazing, is so good that it is worth virtually every, any amount of time and effort that I'm gonna put in. But it is important that I am mindful that it's gonna take some time to see amazing results. It might not take too much time before I can see some good results, but I need a lot of time to acquire some amazing results and the kind of results that I want to obtain in order to achieve the goals that I've set out for myself. Okay, now it's time to talk about the practical steps that I will implement in my life in order to tackle this problem. So what I've decided to do for this episode is, instead of waiting for a moment to plan a little bit better how to introduce this into my life, I'm gonna start right away, or maybe not right away, right now it exists, but over the coming few days, I'm gonna start working out, because that will help me to learn to train my mental and physical toughness and resilience. At the same time, I will decide over the coming days as well what hobby I want to pursue in order to train my mental and emotional toughness and resilience. And some of you might ask me, wait a second, but in the previous episode, episode 3, you mentioned that you wanted to have a hobby, and working out was the prime candidate for that, in which you don't want to learn anything. You just want to do that hobby for the sake of enjoying yourself and having a good time. And I want to point out something, that I'm still doing that because I am not changing the way I train in order to specifically strengthen my mental toughness or my physical toughness. I'm gonna train as I would always have, as I would have anyway had I never made this drawing, but the toughness will come up as a side effect, a very welcome side effect, a very positive side effect, but a side effect nonetheless. So I'm still gonna, train as I would have anyway. I'm still gonna train as usual, but mental toughness will come up, will be strengthened just passively through me working out. So that is a very positive, side effect. But I need to start right away because this is a very complex and long-term work, and I want to start getting some results as soon as possible. Now, this was my solution to this problem. What if you have the same problem? What if you're dealing with apathy yourselves? How do you tackle that? Because maybe the source of your apathy is different. Maybe you are dealing more with the fear of failure, with self-sabotaging, or maybe you have an even different origin for your apathy. Or what if you have a different problem? How do you get to that, to the solution for that specific problem? Well, that is where Neurographica comes in. Neurographica is a technique that helps you with a wide range of problems that you can tackle in your own life. Do you want to make peace with an event of your past that is still impacting you negatively today? Well, Neurographica can help you out with that. Do you want to plan your future in the most effective and personal way? Neurographica can help you out with that. Do you want to win the lottery? No, then Neurographica cannot help you out with that. But, it's a technique that is very powerful and very versatile because you can work on it whenever you want, on the topic that you want, and will give you the best solution for you. Not a general solution, the specific solution that works best for you at that point in time for the topic you're working on. So from that point of view, I think it's a very interesting and technique that is worth your time. I am a certified Neurographica instructor, specialist, and supervisor, and I organize courses in which I give you all the tools that you need in order to start applying Neurographica into your own life and change it for the better. Now, if this video is your first introduction to the world of Neurographica, I invite you all to join my introductory course to Neurographica, which I call the Basic User Course of Neurographica, in which I provide you with the fundamental rules of this method, the basic principles of this technique, and where I teach you some algorithms like this one, where you can, with which you can solve a wide range of issues that you might face one day or another throughout your life. So if you have any questions, if you have any doubts, or if you want more information about my courses, you can write to me in my email address, or you can contact me through my social media profiles. All of the links are in the description below. With this being said, thank you very much for listening, thank you very much for watching and sticking with me till the end of the video. See you next time at Maiora. Oh, you're still here. I'm very happy to see that. If you want, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, or you can open this playlist that contain all of the episodes of this series, or you can watch this video. I'm sure you're gonna like that. The choice is yours. Have fun, and I'll see you in the next video.